Tiffany and I are going to get close and cuddly on the couch. If anybody wants to come up, relax. No, because this is going to be a pretty vulnerable, intimate conversation about a theme that we've been talking about today is sort of, where are there safe spaces for us? And Tiffany and I are in the music business, which, as you can imagine with the tagline, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, wasn't exactly created for women by women, and really has not been a safe space. But we've persevered through it. And Tiffany, you are a Grammy award-winning songwriter. You're one of the most in-demand songwriters. And you decided to quit the music business.
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about why, and then what happened and what you've gone on to do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, hi. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I want to just tell you guys, this is my first time back in this city in over a year because I didn't feel safe. And so I feel good being up here. I feel very proud of myself for being here. I feel welcome, and so I just wanted to say thank you. So yeah, I was in the music business for, 15 years as a songwriter. I love it. I love creating. It's my first love. I've been writing since I was 12 years old. And, I've written for artists like Jennifer Hudson, Zendaya, Cassie, Jason Derulo. I've written for shows like Star and Empire, and for movies and all kind of stuff. And, I've accomplished some of my wildest dreams. Hearing songs you've written on the radio is crazy. But the music industry is treacherous. And, navigating the industry as a young woman is challenging. And, I left the business for two reasons. One, because it was no longer equitable, and because it was never safe. And so I left in a blaze of glory. I ended up speaking out about my experience in 2020 and went viral by accident. Was not expecting that, and a lot of people felt the same way that I was feeling, which was underserved, unheard, underappreciated, very underpaid, and not safe. And so what started as me speaking out turned into a movement, turned into an organization that I founded in July of 2020 called the 100 Percenters. And now I advocate to create safer spaces in the music industry. We created a grant program. We assist financially. We help people get out of archaic contracts. I was the first person that got out of an archaic contract for us. Yeah, it's been a ride.
I want to acknowledge that. So when you talk about there aren't safe spaces, a lot of times in the recording studio, women end up in these spaces. It's late at night. There's really no rules. And they're put together by sometimes publishing companies, record labels, sometimes artists, and they'll invite songwriters. And in my 20 years working in the music business, I don't think I've ever met a woman who hasn't had some kind of traumatic experience in a recording studio.
Absolutely.
It's like the casting couch space.
Yes.
And a lot of times, even just to get into the studio to write songs, there's these gatekeepers that are asking for favors, dates, giving you a key card. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just a very, very difficult place to get into. And I think when I saw the data from Dr. Stacy Smith from the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, she came out with data that showed us a few years ago that only 2% of the big mainstream songs were produced by women, and only 15% had a woman in the room writing on the song. Mm-hmm. So when you think about the body of hits that we've all been listening to for a long, long time, it's mainly men producing it, engineering it, like deciding who gets in the space to write it, writing it. And when I heard that, when that data came out, I want to say it was maybe 5-6 years ago, we were at the Grammys, And the report had just been announced. And they asked the head of the Recording Academy at the time, Neil Portnow, at the Grammys, they asked him, they said, what do you think about this? These are really abysmal numbers. What does this say? And do you remember what he said?
Didn't he say women needed to step up?
Yeah.
Well, look at us.
He did. He said women need to step up.
Yeah.
And a bunch of us said, well, you know what?
Sure.
You need to step down.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, Neil was a friend. Like, I knew him, and he was upset that we came out and said, you need to step down. But it just showed that he really didn't get it.
Yeah,
you know?
very out of
and
touch.
And he'd been there for 30 years, and it was time. It's like, there's a time to pass on leadership when you don't understand these sort of situations that have locked women out of the music business. And that's just not just in the songwriters, not just in the producers, in the executive positions too, in management.
That's what I was gonna say. Tell me about you, Ty. I know you're a powerhouse manager. You manage John Legend, Charlie Puth. You run Friends at Work.
Yeah.
How's it been being a woman in the music industry?
Well, I was a singer in Philadelphia. I was a songwriter, and I grew up singing in every band I could get myself into, and in every a cappella group. So when I was at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, I ran the jazz and blues a cappella group, Counterparts. And, music was a safe space for me when I was young in Philly. I sang with Questlove's sister Dawn in a band. I thought I was going to be a singer. But my immigrant father, who was from Lithuania, was like, no, you should study economics and finance, because if you're going to make it in America, you need to understand
make some
business,
money.
right? So I ended up going more I ran the singing group in college, and I think that was my first experience as a manager. I managed 13, singers, and got us into spring break in Sandals, Jamaica for free. That was my big first win as a manager.
That's awesome.
And then I ended up going back to business school, to Wharton Business School, after I had a little stint in my early 20s in kind of, creative spaces and tech companies. By the way, my first job out of Penn was at this tech company that was going to, making .com sites in the late 90s. And that first week of my job, the head of the company was like, everybody, we're going to go to lunch. And he takes the whole company out to lunch, and it's 15 people in this company, and I'm the only woman. And he takes us to a strip club.
Oh.
Delilah's Den.
Fun.
So this is 1997, and there was no language. We didn't talk about sexual harassment. There was no wording for it.
Yeah.
Not that I knew about. Right? And I thought I was this smart, cum laude, Penn grad, ready to take on the world, and I just kept bumping into it. And it was the only thing I could do back then was smile and be like, oh, no, you're married. Come on. To the boss who would come and give you shoulder rubs and try to hit on you. So that's your 20s, right? So I went back and got my MBA in part because I wanted to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
I wanted to be empowered. I wanted to know the P&Ls. I wanted to feel like people could really respect what I understood. And I got my Wharton MBA. And while I was in my second year of Wharton, we were 20% of the class, 80% was men. I was roofied at a Wharton party.
Sorry to hear that.
And I'm still processing that.
Yeah.
But even business school for me was not a safe space. And so by that point, I'd had so much trauma, I was kind of shut down emotionally. And I just wanted to win and succeed. And I worked in consulting. I took a job out here in strategy consulting for Kevin Mayer at LEK Consulting. I was like a businesswoman. I was gonna beat the men. I was in the room with all the men. I was wearing these suits. And I was in my late 20s, and I felt so far removed from my soul, from my creativity and the thing I loved. And I was on this Alaska Airlines flight coming back from Seattle, 2005, on December 26th. And I'm looking out over Mount Rainier. And a giant hole opened up in the plane. It was like a loud explosion. And the mask came down, and I thought to myself, this is it. This is how it ends.
Terrifying.
And I hadn't done anything I wanted to do. So I begged God and my dead Lithuanian grandmother that if we survived, I was like, please, I will go and do what I'm meant to do. I will take on my passion again. I will get back to the things I love, and I will stop living this life for my father. And based on all the trauma and all the wounds I'd been covering up. And we landed, and that was I quit my big power job, and I took about 6 months to heal and to reconsider. And I called my old friend from college who also ran the Jazz and Blues a cappella group with me. And his name was John Stevens in college, but then he changed his name to John Legend. And he had put out his first album, and it was doing well, and we were like, John, you're gonna make it, this is working. And he said, well, come to New York, and let's whiteboard, and let's see what we can do. And he always wanted me to stay in my creative. He was kind of mad I went to Wharton, and he was like, why are you doing that? You're an artist. So I went to New York, and we whiteboarded that we were gonna start a music company. We were gonna start a film and TV production company. We're gonna end world poverty. We put everything we wanted. We were really ambitious nerds. And within a short amount of time after that, in 2006, we started John Legend Ventures. And then he left his big power guy manager, and he said, why don't you do it? You could be my manager, but go team up with guys that have done it. Mm-hmm. And by this point, I'm living my dream. I'm like, I got this. But then it was 10 years of teaming up with existing power guys, none of whom had, I'm not trying to sound snobby about education, but none of them had graduated high school. They hustled their way into these power positions, mm-hmm. and they were good managers of artists, but they weren't great managers of companies or employees or team members or partners. So I ended up in these spaces for 10 years where I was getting no pay, doing all the work, getting none of the credit. And I was like, this sucks. And the sexual assault and sexual harassment was still happening. And long story short, about 10 years ago, I started my own company because I was like, I'm gonna create my own space. We're gonna do it different
Period,
rules.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so Ty and I just connected, when was that? A couple months
ago. Yeah.
And it was because of a very crazy situation going on right now with Sean Combs. And you came forward and you wrote an op-ed. I came forward and I wrote an op-ed. Mm-hmm. And then
women connected us.
Yeah.
Our friend Binta, who was also a manager and is now a lawyer in the music business, and she was like, you need to meet Tiffany Red.
Yeah.
And I was writing an op-ed about my own experience in my early 20s where I was on a yacht. P. Diddy was throwing a party. I was not in the music business. I just happened to be invited on this yacht. And I'm not going to get into that. It's in the op-ed what happened on the yacht. But that was in my early 20s when I was like, oh yeah, the music business is not for me. This place is not safe. And I decided to write this op-ed now because I thought, well, who else is speaking out about any of this other than you and women who had to, so you knew that space. Tell us about what you knew and what you've experienced.
Well, so when I said that I wasn't comfortable coming to LA, this is why I wasn't comfortable coming to LA. I wrote my op-ed in December of last year, and as a songwriter, I was one of the songwriters that wrote loads of songs for Cassie that unfortunately you guys have never heard because of all of the things going on.
Will you tell us, just for anybody who doesn't know, who Cassie is?
Cassie is an artist. She's a model. She's an actress. She's a friend. She's a mom, a wife. She's awesome. She's a great person. And also the former girlfriend of Sean Combs. Yeah. So I came forward about my experience as a songwriter, working with her and for Bad Boy in December. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the news. It's all been insane and scary and crazy, but I always said from the beginning, when I knew that something was wrong, I always told Cass, if you ever say something, I will stand right next to you. I knew it was wrong. I always wanted to come forward. And, you know, I think what informs my work as an activist is my experience as a songwriter. And unfortunately, I've seen the worst of people. I've seen the worst of this industry. I've seen the worst of abuse of power. I've seen the worst of turning your head and not doing anything about it. I've seen the worst of people continuing to empower people that we know make rooms unsafe. And it was important to me to take my own power back and fight for myself and fight for my community and other people. And so, you know, I came forward, wrote the op-ed, did a couple news interviews, and then...
And you started, so this is why she's my hero. You started the Safe Music Business Pledge, which I've signed, and the Recording Academy has signed, and we're trying to get all sorts of companies to sign in the music business, because you cannot solve these things and fix them unless you start to unearth the truth, and then commit together on a better process.
Absolutely.
So why don't we talk about, in the short amount of time we have left, a little bit about the solutions, because I think every recording studio should have a giant, beautiful piece of art and signage, maybe made by different artists, fine artists, painters, poets, that says, your body is your own body. No one should be able to touch you, coerce you, manipulate, do anything to you in this safe space of creating art. If something happens and you are not safe, this is a 24-hour hotline number you can call. That's not that hard.
It's not hard at all.
Why has that not been happening? Why don't publishing companies, record labels, and people in studios do this? Like, it's on the subway in LA, there's a sign like that.
I mean, when we first sat down, you said sex, drugs, rock and roll. The culture of the music business is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so, you know, I've had plenty of people say to me, you're trying to kill the party.
The buzz.
You're no fun. You're
Creativity can't happen unless
without
the booze is flowing and the girls have to be there to inspire the men. You know,
it's crazy. And so I think the reason why it's been so challenging is because unfortunately there's a lot of bad apples, and I think that. Like you said,
it's not just one person.
It's a whole system. It's well funded. It's well oiled. It is the worst kept secret in the game. And so, you know, I mean, doing the Safe Music Business Pledge, we've been, you know, communicating with all the big, you know, majors, DSPs, PROs, everybody. And there are some people that ignore us. There are some people that, you know, our allies that have the conversation with us and have to look me in the face and be like, I know. We can't do this.
Right, because they're afraid they're going to be exposed.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we can do it, and we have to go. But, I mean, we're going to do this, but the time is up. But I did want to say, before we leave, it is Giving Tuesday.
Yes.
And if you have 50, 100, 200, 2,000 to give, the 100%ers.
The 100%ers.com, yep.
We all need to fund this women's nonprofit organization that is changing the music business, making it safer. And I'm so grateful for you, Tiffany. Thank you so much for speaking up and out.
Thank you.